previous shiurim on this week's parsha are from last year, indelibly yours. From 2 years ago, there was a shiur called Make It Mine, and from 3 years ago, there was a shiur called Untenable. Okay, so this week's parsha Naso, starts off with the story of the sota. Now, what is a sota? A sota is a woman who is suspected of possible adultery because she secluded herself with a man who is not her husband, and the husband discovers, and she has to go through this ordeal of drinking the sota water. And without going into it too much, because we've already talked about this previously, she has to drink this water which contains the name of Hashem, which has been dissolved in it. So either if she's guilty, then she has a terrible thing happen to her body, where her body blows up, or if she's innocent, then she has the option that she becomes pregnant. So a sota is somebody who is suspect. She's a woman who is suspect. Now, the Gemara compares somebody who is suspect of this forbidden relationship, compares that type of person to somebody who doesn't fix regular times for Torah. So, again, somebody who is constantly involved in forbidden relationships is compared to somebody who doesn't fix regular times for Torah. Now, you should be screaming at this point, because surely somebody who is adulterous, how can you compare that to somebody who doesn't learn Torah on a regular basis? It doesn't say he doesn't learn Torah. It says he doesn't learn Torah regularly. So this guy could be learning. Every now and again, he learns a bit here, he learns a bit there. So he's not somebody who's ignorant. He's somebody who's learning. So why is this so bad? So the answer is, it's all to do with what we call, or what I call, fear of commitment. A person could learn Torah. He could be, at a spare moment he does a bit here, a bit there. But unfortunately, he doesn't want to commit to a regular seder of learning. He doesn't want to have a fixed time where that time is my time for Torah and nothing will come ahead of that. A person only learns Torah when it's convenient for him. He's a bit of a floater. His life involves a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And that's the same thing with somebody who's involved in these forbidden or shallow relationships, because they're literally going through life like there was that song, wherever I lay my hat, that's my home. You're like a football. You kicked here, you kick there, you get involved in this, you get involved in that. There's no kaviyut, there's no consistency in your life. You're not making anything out of your life. That's why it's so bad if somebody doesn't fix times for Torah. Because if you don't fix times for Torah, it shows that you're not prioritizing the Torah. It shows that Torah for you is nothing. Whenever I want to, whenever it fits in with my schedule, and that's really not what life is about. And now they're on the subject of marital relationships and what that involves. Let me tell you a short story, because I've got quite a few stories today. Let me tell you a short story about Rav Aryeh Levine. Now, we all know Rav Aryeh Levine, the tzaddik of Yerushalayim. There was a story told that when he was an old man, he took a taxi once, and the driver said to him, Harav, Evo Bayit Shelcha? Evo Bayit Shelcha? I kept asking him, Evo Bayit Shelcha? Where is your home? Where is your home? And the rabbi would not answer him. So afterwards he just said, look, what street do you live in? He said, you asked me what street I live in? I live in this street. So the taxi driver said, why didn't you tell me where your home is? So Rav Aryeh Levine said to the driver, he said, You asked me where my home is. You didn't ask me where I live. My home is my wife, and my wife already died. So I don't have a home. I have a house where I live, but my home is not with me anymore. You see, a wife is a home. She's called Akeret Habayit. And if you treat your wife like your home, if we all treat our wives like our homes, then maybe our Shalom Bayit will be that much better. And I continue now that I'm telling stories. I'll tell you another couple of stories here. There's a very famous story. I don't believe I've told this story before, but it's so important we hear this story. This is to do with judging people favorably. This is to do with the underdog. This is to do with life. This story has relevance for everybody. There was a Rav called Rav Yechiel Michal Heller, and he had a story in his family history that was incredible. So whenever he would sign a document, he would sign it Rav Yechiel Michal Heller He'aluv. What does the word He'aluv mean? He'aluv means somebody who is low, in a very low and demeaning position. Why would he call himself He'aluv, the lowly? So he tells a story that his grandfather was a businessman. He was a great Rav, but he also had a business. And he used to go abroad to buy goods. And when he was abroad, he used to leave his young daughter, in charge of his shop. And his young daughter would, look after the shop and all the supplies while her father was away. Now, a young girl by herself in the shop, it can't be very easy because you're dealing with male customers. And of course, the senior Rav Heller was a very holy person, and his daughter was no different. But very often with these things, rumors fly around that, there's a young girl working in the shop, she's by herself, she's serving male customers, maybe she's not as chaste as she could be. And there were rumors which were, of course, completely baseless. And before they knew it, she developed a reputation which was completely unfounded. And by this stage, she reached the parsha of shidduchim, of being of a marriageable age. But because of these ridiculous rumors, nobody wanted to take her for a shidduch. Now, she should have got the best shidduch. She should have been married to the son of a Rosh Yeshiva. Could have been married to the son of one of the Gedolim. But nobody wanted to give her a second look. And of course, she got older and older, and it never gets easier as you get older. And then, eventually, the parents were beside themselves. And the poor daughter is growing older and more desperate now, and she thought, when am I going to ever get married? And they started looking for shidduchim for anybody. In the end, they found a shidduch of somebody, I think his name was Yitzchak Shmeiser. Who was this Yitzchak Shmeiser? He was his name was Shmeiser, his second name was Shmeiser. Why was it called Shmeiser? Shmeiser means the one who would hit. Now, we're not talking about somebody who is an abuser. This fellow used to work with horses. And he used to give the horse a hit to get the horse to gallop. So he was a big, strong, starker fellow, and he wasn't, let's say, the brightest button in the box. He wasn't the Chofetz Chaim. He was a simple Jew. And even him, it took convincing for him to make the shidduch. And the girl herself, she also took convincing to go for the shidduch because she wanted a Ben Torah. But by this time in life, the situation was very difficult. And the marriage was consented by both parties. And then the chuppah took place. And the daughter of this senior Rav Heller was under the chuppah, and she was davening to Hashem. She said, Ribono shel olam, you know that all these rumors that got me into this position of my bad reputation, they were all baseless. and they were all made by cruel people who wanted to ruin my father's business. But you know the truth, and you know that I married this man. I really wanted to marry a Ben Torah, but I'm here and I'm getting married. But I want you to do something for me. I want you, Ribbon Shalom, I want you to give me children who are Talmidei Chachamim, because I always wanted to marry a Talmidei Chacham. I want my children to be B'nai Torah and to learn and make learning the focus of their lives. And her wish came true, her prayer came true, because she had 4 sons, one better than the other, including Rav Yechiel Michal Heller, who tells this story. So you see, very often a person can be wrongly accused and can gain a reputation, and we never judge them favorably. But you see, Hashem remembers. We just said on Shavuot, those of us, Achenu Ashkenazim, who daven in Ashkenazi shuls, we hear the Yizkor prayer. And it says, Yizkor Elokim. Hashem always remembers. If there's somebody who is emestic, who has the emet, and everyone else thinks that they're not doing the right thing, but this person knows he's doing the right thing, and Hashem will never forget that person. And then there's a story which is to do with Rav Moshe Aaron Stern, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, who I saw briefly from the back as he was walking away from me. Once I saw him, and that was enough to put an incredible impression on me. The story is told of Rav Moshe Aaron Stern, who had a Talmud, and this Talmud was married and had a problem with Shalom Bayit. Now, when you think of problem with Shalom Bayit, you think, the husband's lazy and the wife is always on his back, or maybe he's an avreich and he's not making money and she's on his back. You have to start working, you have to stop in kollel, or maybe who knows what type of Shalom Bayit. Listen to this problem in Shalom Bayit. This avreich, this Talmud, came to Rav Moshe Aaron Stern. He said, Rebbe, my problem is that I am a halacha man. I love to learn halacha. I love to learn Mishnah Brura. And I learn all day. I like to learn the halacha l'ma'aseh, which, by the way, Rav Avadia says, if a person is a balabos, he's a working man, and he has no more than 3 hours a day to learn, he should learn halacha and not Gemara. This is halacha. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. It's halacha. If he has more than 3 hours a day, then he learns Gemara. But if he's a balabos, he's working and he has up to 3 hours, he should learn halacha. Incredible, I know, but if you listen to my daily halacha, which I send by MP3, you will hear, and I'll give you the citation as well. So this fellow said, I'm learning halacha, and I'm learning the Mishnah Berurah, and my wife is telling me she does not want me to learn Mishnah Berurah. She wants me to learn Gemara. She wants me to learn Lomdus. She wants me to learn the Shakel V'Tarya. And she's telling me I didn't want to marry a posek, I wanted to marry a lamdan, somebody who sits and steigs over the Gemara day and night. So it's affecting my Shalom Bayit, Rabbi. What shall I do? So Rav Stern said, look, I cannot help you in this matter. It's beyond me. Let's go and speak to Rav Shach. So he went to Rav Shach and he spoke to Rav Shach. And Rav Shach said, bring the young man. No, he said, I'm sorry. Rav Shach said to Rav Stern, bring the wife. Bring this fellow's wife. So the wife of this poor young Talmud comes, she's probably trembling. She comes to the Gadol Ador, Rav Shach, and expecting Rav Shach to quiz her and saying, what is it? You want to learn Lamdut? And expecting the whole long explanation of what are the merits of Torah. So the young lady, the young wife gets ushered into Rav Shach. Rav Shach tells her to sit down, and he proceeds to offer her a plate of cake. There's a few pieces of cake on this plate. Different types of cake. Rav Shach said, help yourself. So the woman's a bit surprised. Okay, she takes one piece of cake, makes a bracha, and she eats it. Rav Shach said, you notice there's two different types of cake on this plate. So she says, yes, I know, I can see. So Rav Shach said, I want you to taste the other type of cake now. So, okay, she takes the other piece of cake. She was wondering where this is going. She eats the other piece of cake. And Rav Shach says, do you notice they taste different? She says, yeah. He says, can you tell me, in your honest opinion, what are the ingredients of both these types of cake? Do you know what is comprised of what these cakes comprise of? So she says, yes, this one is a chocolate cake. It's got cocoa, eggs, margarine, sugar, flour, and she gives the whole long list. And this cake is a sponge cake or whatever. It's a kokosh cake. It's phyllo pastry, or it contains bleached flour, not brown flour. She goes through the whole ganze Meise. So Rav Shach said, good, very nice. I can see you know a lot about baking. And seeing as you know a lot about baking, I would humbly suggest that this is really the avenue you should stick with, and you let your husband stick with Torah, which he knows very well. And with that, the woman went away, and she got the message, and from then on, apparently, the Shalom Bayit went very well. Now, again, you have to understand this story. If you misunderstand this story, you will come out with the wrong conclusion. You will think Rav Shach is just being patronizing to this woman. He was being very, very far from patronizing. He was making something very clear to her. He was saying that everyone has their own kivun in life. Everyone has their own direction in life. Everyone has their own strengths and potential and capability. And we really need to stick with what we can do as opposed to trying to control what we can't do. Now you're going to see, I'm going to end off with a story which really demonstrates this to a fantastic level. Right, let's move on in the parasha. In Perek Vav Pasuk Chaf, that's 6, verse 20, we talk about the Nazir. Who is the Nazir? The Nazir is the person who disallows himself to drink anything, any wine product, any grape product. So that means wine, grape juice, grapes, grape pips, any grape derivative, and he grows his hair long. And Stam Nazirus is for 1 month. So a regular period of being a Nazir is for 30 days. Now, what's the deal with the Nazir? Why does a person become a Nazir? Well, it says that the person who sees the Sota, we mentioned the Sota woman in the beginning of the shir, if a person sees a Sota in her shame, when she is in the midst of this trial, etc., then he will get so affected by this situation that he'll want to keep away from the Yetzer Hara completely, and he would want to remove himself and put restrictions on himself and become a Nazir. So we all think about this and we say, wow, it's amazing. A person is so committed to Hashem that he wants to take extra measures to keep his Yetzer Hara at bay. Wonderful, amazing. But there's one thing that's a little bit puzzling, which the Al-Shich HaKadosh picks up on. Because we say a person who sees the Sota in her shameful state, it gets so affected he becomes a Nazir. But why does he have to go that far? A person who sees the Sota and he sees how far things can spiral when a person doesn't keep within the bounds of moral behavior, should automatically become fearful and never want to get into that situation. Why does he have to become a Nazir? Why does he have to take the extra step? This sight of seeing the Sota should be enough to shock us into automatic, stringency. Why do you have to take this extra measure? There's no need for it. So the Al-Sheikh comes with an incredible lesson, which is valid as much as it was in the Al-Sheikh's time, and as much as it was valid then, it's valid today. Because there's a difference between a person who sins and a person who sins habitually. Because if you think about it, a normal person is a rational person. A normal person will say, you know what? This certain thing is bad for me. Eating the wrong things is bad for me. Taking drugs is bad for me. Being immoral is bad for me. Not keeping mitzvah is bad for me. Therefore, why should I do them? What possible reason could I have to commit this aveira? And we should say, yeah, logic dictates this, and therefore we keep away from it. But the problem is we don't think like this. We get involved in aveirot. So then we think to ourselves, okay, a person does an aveira, and then he feels bad, and he thinks, you know what, why did I do that? Why did I eat that extra piece of cheesecake, and now I'm not going to fit into my trousers? Or if you're a woman, I'm not going to fit into my dress. It was stupid. Why did I make that mistake? Okay, I won't do it again. Fine. But there's a third stage, that a person can get so enmeshed and entrenched in the aveira that it becomes like second nature to him. And he gets involved and it becomes kiragil. I'm doing it normal and I don't even think about the aveira when I do that. I'm not talking about keeping on a diet. That's not an aveira per se. I'm talking about somebody who does an aveira which is asur from the Torah or asur from the rabbis, the Rabbanan. And for him, it's like water off a duck's back. Now, the problem is, when a person gets involved in those aveirot, and somebody else, a third party, looks at him and says, he's doing aveirot. He looks all right. He's not suffering. He's doing fine. So why can't I do the aveira? He's not on the straight and narrow. He's doing well for himself. He keeps his shop open on Shabbat. He's making a huge profit. His business is going brilliantly. He's got 5 houses. So why shouldn't I break Shabbat? And the problem is we take an example from these people. So the Al-Shir says, despite the sin, people continue along their bad way even though they're fully aware of the consequences. And when somebody on the outside sees that sinner in his habit and he sees him, quote unquote, getting away from it, then that could be a terrible influence. That can be a terrible influence. Says Rav Baruch Sorotskin, not the Al-Shich, I made a mistake. Rav Baruch Sorotskin says that is why a person desperately wants to become a Nazir when he sees the Sotah. Because he sees a person who lives a good life and he or she can do Aveirot and nothing, there's no thunderbolt that comes and strikes them. So therefore I can also be like that. I can also do an Aveirah. No. A person never does an Aveirah and gets away with it. That's why we say, when it says in the Tachnun, Velo shavalanu, a person when he's repenting in the Tachanun, he says, it was not worth it. Whatever profit I think I gained, it was never ever worth it for me. Velo shavalanu. Nobody ever profits from sin. Now I mentioned the Al-Sheikh, he says a different chidush. He says like this. He says that the Nazir, at the end of his period of Nazirut, the Nazir can drink wine. That's what the Pasuk says. But if he's finished his period of being a Nazir, why is he called a Nazir? You should call him a person. When he was a Nazir, when he grew his hair long and he was not allowed to drink grape products, then he's a Nazir. Why you call him a Nazir when he's finished his Nazirut? You should call him an ordinary person. The answer is, says the Al-Sheikh, that he's still considered a Nazir because after he's finished his Nazirut, if he takes the lessons that he learned when he was under those restrictions, then he still continues to be a Nazir, even though he's not observing the external factors. Because a person, when he takes the lesson, he continues to stay on that level of holiness. Now this is something which we must take with us now that we've come out of Shavuot. Because on Shavuot we learned some tremendous lessons. We stayed up all night, we were steiging and learning with our chavrutot, we were in shiurim, listening to very special people teaching us Torah, and there was a camaraderie. And now we finished Shavuot, we go back into our ordinary lives. We go into the summer. What have we learned from this? Are we somebody who's still living that dream of Shavuot? Or is it just like a relic of history? And we've left that now. Now we're moving on. Now we're getting into summer holidays, and we're all going on vacation, and we've got our holiday homes. And all that learning we did on Shavuot, that's in the past. I did that already. I'm yotzeh. I've finished my obligation. No. When a person encapsulates those lessons and takes them with him, then he's still considered as if he's there and he's learning Torah all night. Or he's like a Nazir, he's kept himself holy. That's why the Nazir is still called the Nazir, even though he's finished his Nazirut. Now I'm going to finish off with probably the most famous episode in this week's parasha, because this is a very, very long parasha. It talks about the korbanot of the Nesiim, the princes, the heads of the tribes, how they all brought the same korban. Now, I've talked about this before. I just want to say one thing. The most famous question is, how come all these 12 tribal chiefs brought the same korban? Each one brought exactly the same korban. And not only that, the parsha enumerates every single korban as exactly the same thing and repeats it 12 times. Why not say the first one bought this and the other 11 bought the same? No, it brings the same formula 12 times. Why? So, the story is told that there was an American rabbi who went to South Africa on a speaking tour, and he spoke in front of a crowd. And if anyone knows the crowd in South Africa, they're very, very receptive to Torah. They love learning. They love Yiddishkeit. The South Africans are the most wonderful people. There are many South Africans here in London. I know plenty of them here in Edgware, and they're the most wonderful people. So this rabbi spoke in front of this crowd in South Africa, and he gave a fire and brimstone shiur, and everyone was listening, and they were bowled over. And at the end of it, he had people come up to him. Wow, Rabbi, that was amazing, fantastic. And he was answering questions, and they wouldn't let him go. And then he had another speaking engagement in another place in South Africa on a different day. So he thought to himself, look, it's another place, it's another day. The shiur that I gave originally came out well, so I'll give the same shiur again, you know. So he comes out there, he steps out in front of the crowd, and as he's looking, he sees oy vey. He looks at one guy, he was there when I gave the other shiur a few days ago in the other town, and he was also there, and he's pointing, he's seeing 1, 2, 3, he's mentally counting, he sees about 50 people in the crowd who were all there at that previous shiur that he gave on that previous day. And he thinks, oy vey, I cannot give the same shiur again. What am I going to do? So he starts thinking to himself, you know, this is, by the way, this is a rabbi's biggest nightmare. When you speak in front of a crowd, there could be two things. A, you've lost your notes. That's a terrible predicament to be in. Or you're speaking in front of a crowd who's heard everything that you've said previously. So now you're literally, it's a test. And you have to man up. You have to know what to do. So this rabbi thought, I have to build a new shiur now. I'm right in front of the crowd. So I started thinking of a shiur that he gave previously, and thinking of different shiurim on different subjects that had nothing to do with what he was speaking. And he pulled something out of the bag, and he got away with it. B'di'evet. It was not ideal at all, but he got away with it. Maybe he got a few slow hand claps, you know, like this, whatever. He got a no-care reaction. So then he sees the people who'd heard the shir previously came up to him afterwards, and the rabbi's apologizing profusely. I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were going to be here. I had to make up a new shir on the spot. And these people said to him, Rabbi, why did you give a whole different shir? The rabbi said, but weren't you at my shir a few days ago? And they all said, yes, we were. But that's why we're here today, because we wanted to hear the same shir again. You understand what comes out of this? Those people were so happy with the shir, they wanted a repeat performance. They wanted to hear the shir again. You know, there's a phrase in England, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Something's going well, why do you need to change it? Why do you need to reinvent? You know, very often we hear songs that we like, and then we hear songs that we love, and then we hear songs that are chaval al hazman. They're what we call keepers. Yeah, these songs are what we take with us to a desert island, like desert island discs. Yeah, they're the song you put on the song, you get to the end of the song, straight away, zip back to the beginning. You hear it again, finish, zip back to the beginning. The same song 50 times. Yeah, some of you know what I'm talking about. Those songs have longevity. They are special. Lahavdil, when it came to the korbanot of Hashem, when these tribal chiefs bought the korbanot, Hashem said, you know what? Each one of you bought the same thing. I didn't look at it as if it was a repeat, like the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, repeats programs all the time. It used to be, when I was growing up, they used to repeat programs all the time. Sometimes when you repeat things, it's worth it. It's something that you want to hear again. So Hashem, Kivyachol, as it were, took the trouble that he repeated in his holy Torah the same formula 12 times. Because you know what? I want to hear it again. It's so precious to me that it's not like a repeat. It's something that I want to hear again. It's that song that I want to rewind as soon as I get to the end. And with this, I'm going to finish off by telling you a couple of stories that I heard yesterday. Because yesterday I had the zechut to go and make a documentary about Lubavitch, about Chabad and the work they do in Essex, in places like Gants Hill, and Buckhurst Hill, and Epping. Now, people, if you listen to this all over the world, you know what Lubavitch are like. If there's anywhere where there's a possibility that there's going to be a Jew there, you'll find a Lubavitch Center there. And we went to make this film out in the sticks, in Essex, where you wouldn't know that there's Jewish people there. There were United Synagogues there that were closing down. Lubavitch came in there, and they were cold calling, knocking on doors. Would you like to come for a Shabbos meal? Now, that you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable position. If you're going out and cold calling, you're putting yourself up for some possible abuse. People say, well, why are you knocking my door? What are you collecting? I don't open my door to strangers. But they did it. They literally did cold calling. And you can see the people there, they had such an effect. The people love the Lubavitch rabbis there. It's a wonder to behold. And the rabbi who I was with, Rabbi Aryeh Safrin, who is in fact at MBE, he told me the following story about the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He told me the story as follows. He told me that there was once a certain rabbi, a Meshulach, whose name was Rav Goldberg, Zichrono Livracha. He passed away now. So he told me that when he was collecting, he used to make a cheshbon. He used to make a calculation of exactly who had donated to him, and he recorded it all on a piece of paper, which ultimately he would go and give to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who would look at the paper and go through it. That was Rav Goldberg's nachas. So one day he'd gone collecting, and it got to very late at night, and he'd finished his day's collecting, and he came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he saw the door was closed. Maybe the Lubavitcher Rebbe went to sleep or whatever, and all the staff had gone. So he decided he was going to put the paper with all the potential donors. He put it inside an envelope, and he put it through the door of the Rebbe, and he wedged it in the door, and he left it. But then he thought, you know what? I want to wait here. I want to wait. Let's see. Maybe I'll come back and see. Wait for the Rebbe to come and open the door and get the letter. So he waited and waited and waited. In the end, he sees the Rebbe comes in, and he opens the door, and the letter falls to the floor. And he's watching this Rabbi Goldberg from afar, and he sees the Rebbe lean down. He was already an old man at the time. He leans down and he picks up the letter, and he picks it up and he goes inside. And now this Rav Goldberg, this Mushulach, this collector, he sees the Lubavitcher Rebbe bends down and he feels terrible. And he goes home, and that night, apparently he couldn't sleep because he felt terrible that he made the Rebbe in his old age, made him bend down, and it must have been so difficult for him. And he came back to the Rebbe the next day and he said, Rebbe, please give me mechila. I made the Rebbe bend down and it must have been so hard for you. The Rebbe says, what are you talking about? Why are you feeling bad? Isn't that why we're here? And he said in Yiddish, which I can't remember and I can't repeat, but I'll tell you in English. The Rebbe said to this Rabbi Goldberg, he said, this is what we're all here for. We are here and we see our fellow Jews in a lowly place, in a place where they shouldn't be. We're all supposed to bend down and scoop up and pick up that Jew and bring them close towards us. So don't feel bad. You should feel good. And this is the lesson we all need to learn. It's not good enough to walk around with our heads in the clouds. And, and people around us, are falling by the wayside. We have to bend down. We have to help those people and put our arms around them and bring them closer to the Torah. And show them our smile, show them a nice face, invite them for a Shabbos meal. How important that is. How many people, Lubavitch, no one comes near to Lubavitch, but Lubavitch and all the other Kiruv organizations, how many people they brought closer to the Torah by just inviting them for a meal. That's what we all have to do. And now I'm going to finish with my final story. The story goes like this. He says, I understand this is a true story. This I heard from Simon Mora, who I was working with when he was making this film. He told me the following story. He said there was a guy who was in California and he was hitchhiking on the road, and he was waiting for a long time in the searing heat in California, and cars were going, and he was, I don't know whether they stick their thumb out or I don't know how they hitch in America. Here we put our thumb out like this, it shows, look, you're going my way. So this fellow's going, he's watching cars go past, nobody's giving him a ride. Suddenly there's a guy, he stops like an older gentleman, and he says, hey, where are you going? And this young man says, nowhere in particular. He said, what? How long have you been waiting here? Hitching a ride? He goes, a couple of hours. He said, what? And you don't even know where you're going? He says, no. So obviously this guy who's with the car thinks this guy is just like a free rider, he's a freeloader. He's got no direction in life. So he says, okay, look, I'll take you in my car whenever you want to get off. You tell me and I'll drop you off. Fine. The guy gets in the car, and the young hitchhiker is talking to the driver, and after a short while, they both discover that they're Jewish. Each one discovers that the other one is Jewish. So the driver says, you really ought to find out about your Judaism. And the hitchhiker says, I don't really know anything about Judaism. I'm not really interested. He says, really? Let me make a suggestion to you. You can take note of what I'm saying, or you can ignore me completely, but I should tell you this. The hitchhiker says, okay, I'm listening. He says, you know what? I could see that you don't have any direction. Your life is just where it takes you. I would humbly suggest the following. I suggest you get on a plane, go fly to Israel, go to Jerusalem, take a taxi. When you get to Jerusalem, go to the Western Wall on a Friday. Just wait there. And when somebody taps you on the back, just listen to what the fellow says. So the guy says, yeah, thank you very much. He gets dropped off and the hitchhiker goes and the two of them part company. Now the guy completely forgets about what the driver had told him. And he goes on his merry way and he gets involved in this and he gets involved in that, like the football we mentioned. He gets kicked here, he gets kicked there. But he never forgets what that driver told him. And he thinks about it, you know what? It might be worth a shot. I've never been to Israel before. Let's give it a go. So, I don't know where he gets the money from. He flies to Israel. He takes a taxi from Tel Aviv. He takes it, or a bus. He takes it to Jerusalem. He gets to the Kotel. It's a Friday, or whatever. I don't know, whatever day in the week. Let's assume it's a Friday, and he's waiting at the Kotel, and he's waiting for somebody to tap him on the back. Time is going on. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. Suddenly, or maybe it's only even 10 minutes. Suddenly he gets a tap on the back. And he thinks, oh, like clockwork. He turns round and he sees a man. And this man's name, in case you haven't guessed it already, this man's name is Jeff Seidel. Now that name should cause instant recognition to a lot of you out there. My wife actually used to work for him when we were first married. Jeff Seidel is, I do not use this term lightly, Jeff Seidel is a living legend. He is Mr. Kotel. He's the one who goes to the Kotel for hours and hours on end, asking people, you want a Shabbos meal? You want a Shabbos meal? And he farms people off to different families for Shabbat. And he's brought people back in Kiruv. Chaval al Azman, you would never believe how many people he's been Mekarev with just a nice word and, you know, just being who he is. He's a warm person. And I personally have been placed for Shabbat meals with Jeff Seidel before I was married. So Jeff says to him, want a Shabbos meal? So he puts him in touch with the family. The fellow says, okay. So this young guy goes to this family for Shabbat, goes for one meal, for two meals, and again back to the Kotel, another family. Cut a long story short, he ends up becoming frum. He ends up going to Aisha Torah, and he ends up becoming a frum guy sitting and learning in yeshiva with his Rebbe. Now, after a while, he's learning with his Rebbe, and he poses his Rebbe with the following question. He says, Rebbe, he says, it's amazing that I'm here. And I thank God that I'm here, that I came through this journey, all from that years ago when I was hitchhiking to all the way now when I was, you know, I'm now here and I'm learning in Kola. But I want to ask you something, Rebbe. You know the fellow that picked me up in the car that time. You know him because he came here just like I came here. But the thing is, the fellow who picked me up in that car all that time ago, he's not here, but yet I'm here. Why am I here? And why is he still back there in California? He might be a little bit more religious than he was, but he's still there. He's still living his lifestyle. So his Rebbe says to him, you know what? I'll tell you why he's there. Because the Rebbe, obviously, in case you haven't guessed it, the Rebbe knew the driver and of course he knew the hitchhiker as well. So the Rebbe said to me, you know, I also asked myself the same thing. Because I remember when that fellow came here to yeshiva, that guy who drove you, who picked you up in the car. I remember when he came here, and I remember sitting with him and talking with him and learning with him a bit, and then he went back to America and I never heard from him. And I thought to myself at the time, well, I failed. What I did was just ineffective. I taught him a bit of Torah, and that's it. I didn't see any payers from it. I didn't see any result from it. And basically, whatever I put into him, I failed, because he went back to being what he was. But now that I see you here, now that I see you came here because of him, because he took the trouble to talk to you and tell you, go to Yerushalayim and go to the Kotel, I realized, of course I didn't fail. On the contrary, I succeeded big time. Because people are meant to learn, and people are meant to sit in cars and talk about Torah, and people are meant to smile at other people, and people are meant to sit in yeshiva, and people are meant to teach Torah, and people are meant to go and offer Shabbos meals. Everyone's got their place in Hashem's world. Every Jew and every non-Jew has got his place in Hashem's world. And that fellow, whatever I did for him, I did for him. But the fact that he brought you here, even indirectly, that was his purpose in this world. What a tremendous lesson comes out of this story. Because we're all built for different things. We're all built with our own potential. We're all built to do something in this world that nobody else can do. And the sooner we realize what it is and that we do what we're supposed to do, the better off we're supposed to be. Yiratzon, all of us should maximize our potential in this world to do what we're supposed to do and not do what we're not supposed to do. And with the zechut of this, with the zechut of the man who was the driver in the story, and with the zechut of the man who was the hitchhiker who became a talmid in yeshiva, and with the zechut of the Rav Hela, who was the Ha'aluv, the zechut of all these wonderful people we mentioned in our shir. We should all come together, ba'achdut, completely fulfilling our potential, b'shleimut, and stand and dance at the Kotel with Mashiach Tzidkenu. May it happen techef v'yam mamash v'chein yosam v'mar amen.